Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to Talk with Tubbs, a petrolhead's perspective. As always, I'm your host, Tapelo, aka Tubbs, and I'm going to talk you through this podcast that deals with everything motoring. We're going to talk what's new on the market, what's old on the market, what's good on the market, and also what's bad on the market. Then we're also going to delve into some motorsport, but more focused on my favorite form of motorsport, Formula One. We're going to talk driver lineups, what we feel, react, but most of all, I'm trying to give you a petrol head's perspective. Words that come from someone who's as passionate about the industry as anyone I know. So as ever, let me not waste your time. Here we go. Talk with Tubbs is a go.
Right. Coming off the back of my previous podcast, I did say this is gonna be my last podcast before the Belgian Grand Prix, but it's really about things I found interesting as I've been going about my life. And the first one is it's my interest with rallying, how I feel about rallying. Look, it's a form of motorsport which I think is really cool. I'm not fully within uh, following and searching, but I've always tried to get some information. I've always seen some drivers. I've always seen some events. It's just not something I've wholly focused on like that. The World Rally Championship, etc., etc. But it is something I've been interested in for a while, and coming into now where you've got cars like the GR Yaris making waves within the car community, you have to look at the origins of that car. Researching more about that car and learning what it's about will pique your interest for rallying and what happens that side. It's super competitive. The drivers are brilliant. I almost used a bad word there. The drivers are brilliant. Some of the best drivers I've seen, period. So yeah, it's very interesting. I remember I had I can't remember the year of the game, but I did have a WRC game on my PlayStation years ago. I think it's time I get another one and just get into that sport again. And one of the things that got me thinking as well was watched a video from Seen Through Glass. I'll put the link in the description. Um, about the Subaru Impreza 22B. Now, look, at the time, these cars went over my head. I think this car came out in 1999, if not 98. I was young at that time, I was really young at that time, but I was not into cars during back then to see the rallying eras of people like Colin McRae, Carlos Sainz Sr., etc., etc. The the memories I have of rallying and rally cars, again, because of a video I watched on Car Fiction, link in the description, was Sebastian Loeb and the Citroen C4. And then I have memories of things like World Rallycross, people like Tanner Faust, Ken Block. Then you have events like the X Games. So those are my experiences with rallying. Back to the road cars. So yeah, cars like the Imprezas, cars like the Mitsubishi Evos, those are cars that have gotten fame from mainstream media and movies, things like Fast and Furious with the Tokyo Drift. They kind of opened up the JDM scene of those cars with the Evos and stuff. But the more, like I said, the more you research into these cars, the more you kind of get what they're about, the more your interest on rallying is peaked. So I found it interesting. Again, please just watch the videos I'll link for rallying in the description. They will have you thinking about certain things. They will just get your mind racing about these cars and what they mean. Again, they're not particularly cars I'd be too interested in simply because they weren't my time. But the more I read about them, the more interested I am, and the more I, to a degree, understand the love and passion that people of that fandom have for rallying. It's really cool. Like I said, the driving is exceptional. It's really a challenge, and rallying is very broad. It really depends on what you want to watch, because yes, it's not the categories of years gone by, but there's still varied and different competition, so that you're thoroughly captivated. It's hot hatches, it's bakkies, it's bikes. There's just a lot to enjoy. There's a lot to take in, and there's definitely quite a lot to follow there. So, yeah, that's something I'll be very interested in going forward. I'll try and get as much exposure to that world as possible. So, moving on from rallying. Now, this is it's a bit of a tough one to talk about, because we all understand the risks associated with motor racing as a whole. I don't want to compartmentalize or put it into categories. Like, if we know the risk of Formula One, we know the risk of this. We know the risks of motorsport as a whole. So I think that's why we watch motorsport. That's why it's so amazing to us, the ones that watch. It's that belief, that faith in your skill, that belief, that faith in your team, that belief, that faith in your equipment, that pushes you to do exceptional things above and beyond what we deem safe, what we deem comparable. Yeah, comparable to what we would do every day. It's not easy being a racing driver. It's not easy attacking corners at 10/10s, but that's why we love to watch them, because we can't bring our bodies, we can't bring our minds to do such, right? So whenever we see a huge accident, whenever we see a life lost to motor racing, it it kind of gives us clarity, but also it kind of gives us further appreciation for what we're watching. You think of Jules Bianchi, you think of Antoine Hubert, you think of going beyond our years, you think of Ayrton Senna, Roland Ratzenberger, you think of things like the 1976 Nürburgring crash with Niki Lauda. All those events have, yes, they are in different areas of motorsport, but they have the same lasting impression for all of us. Like I said, it gives us clarity on what these guys are doing and the risks that these guys are taking on board, but it also gives us a greater appreciation for why we're watching it. And it kind of brings us back to the basics of why we watch these guys drive week in, week out, why we appreciate it so much. So yeah, during my isolation, a friend of mine sent me an animation. It's on YouTube. Again, I will put the link in the description box below. But it's an animation about the Le Mans 1955 race, and it's about the ultimate crazy crash that resulted in Mercedes pulling out of motorsport for the better part of 4 decades after that. And it's told from the perspective of one of their drivers. It's been a few weeks since I watched the animation, but I cannot get it out of my mind. Look, the animation is brilliant, right? Let's start off there. The animation is brilliant. It's a short story. It's animated, but it's told. I know it's weird for me to kind of tell you about a movie, but it's because it's related to what we love. It's told with such depth, such understanding, such nuance to what was happening. A crash by a Mercedes car that resulted in the ultimate death of 80 people is not something you can easily ignore. And it's no surprise why Mercedes gave up on motor racing for 4 decades, 40 years from that race, before Mercedes would come back to mainstream racing. Look at where they are now. We cannot talk about Formula One without talking about Mercedes. We cannot talk about different racing series without talking about the Mercedes. Whenever you think about these racing series, somewhere, somehow, a Mercedes does pop into your mind. You look at the AMG GT3, you look at the CLK 63 GTR. All these things are race cars, Mercedes race cars that have become so synonymous with modern day racing. But it was almost not to be because of an incident 60, 70 years ago. And it's important, again, to the families that were affected by that and to people that lost their lives. We're sorry, but it's such an important moment. And to watch this animation that told the story so great without focusing on the broader picture, but to humanize the sport, to humanize the incident, to humanize the interactions. It was so beautiful to watch. Look, yes, maybe you'll just watch it absent-mindedly and you enjoy it or you won't enjoy it. That's fine. But it was such a great story, man. I think if there's something you take from this podcast, please go and watch that animation. As I said, I will link it down below. It's just brilliant. It's just brilliant. I enjoy watching things like this where someone puts their heart and soul, their passion into a project. It can be something as simple as a 5-minute car review, a 3-minute over sensationalization of a car, to something as complex as telling a story, to something as minuscule as a drawing, to something as emotive as a picture, to something like a guy sitting in front of his laptop telling you about his passion. I love seeing all of that. And when it coincides with something that I am passionate about, when it coincides with motorsport, when it coincides with sports as a whole, I just love that. And I think you can pick it up from my voice how excited, emotional, just how happy I am to be sharing this with you. I know the subject matter is not something to be shared like that, but I love seeing the ultimate expression of something. I always have this answer whenever someone asks me, why do you love sports so much? It doesn't matter what it is: football, rugby, netball, cricket, Formula One, whatever the case may be. Why do I love it so much? And I always have the same reply, is that no matter what sport you're watching, no matter what sport you enjoy, once you see someone playing a sport or a sport being played to its highest level, to its peak level, with the utmost level of care, precision, talent, skill, dedication, it becomes a thing of beauty. I know I'm going on a tangent far from what I wanted to talk about, but yeah, again, I'm giving you perspective into what drives me to record these podcasts, what drives me to watch these sports every week. It's why I'm a petrol head. It's why we love, I don't have a car, but it's why petrol heads love their cars. It's why we read about these things. It's why we watch videos every day. It's why we never get tired of it. It's that passion. It's that emotion that we feel towards these things. And so yeah, these incidents, and what initially got me thinking about this was the huge crash at Spa 24 Hours, where it involved Kevin Estra, um who's this William driver now? Jack Aitken, that's the guy, and there were two other drivers, I cannot remember their names. But I didn't I saw it on Twitter trending about this huge crash. I never went to find the video, and I never saw the video on my timeline. But when I logged into YouTube to watch something else, the video popped up, and I was like, oh, let me watch. And as a result of that, it was a huge crash, by the way. I will not link that. If you want to find it, that's up to you. But, oh, man, it's, like I said, it brings clarity and a greater level of appreciation. That's why I was talking about this. And as a discourse arising from this huge incident, a lot of people were calling for Eau Rouge to be changed somehow to reduce the risks of that corner, because we've had two substantial crashes now, that and the one that took the life of Antoine Hubert. All this is why I'm having this conversation about passion. All this is why I'm trying to give you clarity. I'm trying to give you understanding about how I, as a passionate petrol head and as a fan, how I interpret these events, how I interpret what I'm seeing. You know, it's not easy to convince someone that the risks are enough. You know, if it doesn't make sense to you, then you won't understand the risks that these guys take. But they're pioneers to a sense. They're daredevils. They're mavericks. You know, and I think that's just what I want to get across. You know, and I've said this in articles I've written. I've said this in previous podcasts. This thing is literally driven by passion. So yeah, it's always scary. It's always frightening, enlightening, humbling to see when things go wrong in the sports that we love. A broken leg, a lost life, an explosion, a man walking through fire. It's a humbling experience for them, for their families, their loved ones, for us watching, the community as a whole. But it's just why we love what we love. It's why we're here week in, week out. And I hope, at the very least, I am adding on to that passion as I do when I record these podcasts. I am adding onto the passion. I am adding a different layer of understanding. I'm adding a valued opinion. I am adding more to your cup of passion. As always, this has been Tapelo on Talk with Tubbs, a petrolhead's perspective. Thank you so much for listening in. See you guys after the Belgian Grand Prix. Cheers.